Today we're here at Moorlands Camp in beautiful Manchester, Jamaica, and we're talking about zipline and aerial adventure park rust. And that starts right now. Hello everyone, Don Stock here with another Challenge Course Pro Tip brought to you by the Adventure Guild, where it's our goal to help you build a better, safer, and more professional Challenge Course program. As a professional aerial adventure company, we get questions from course owners, operators, and in-house inspectors about the topic of course and equipment rust all the time. Some of the most common things are questions like, is rust on a course really that big a deal? Is it a problem? How much rust is too much rust as we're dealing with components? When should rusty components be dealt with or replaced? What factors make rust issues worse? And then what can be done on the front end to help deter rust development and to keep it in check? But before we jump in, I want to remind you that you will find links to any equipment, resources, organizations, or anything else that I mentioned in this video in the description. And as always, if you find this information helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel because it helps you to get this information in front of others who can benefit from the things that we are producing. And if you have questions about course rust or solutions for dealing with it, be sure to contribute to the conversation in the comments. We would love to hear from you. So the first question, and it's a fair one, is rust on a course or equipment really a problem? And when I get that question, my standard response is usually. But because rust develops kind of along a continuum rather than kind of an all or nothing proposition, the reasons and rationale for rust being a problem varies. Now, how urgent an issue it is depends on the conditions and what it is that it's affecting. Now, realistically and practically though, rust is almost inevitable. It's pretty rare for any outdoor aerial adventure course or zip line or challenge course to not have any rust beyond its first season. So the question really is, how much rust is too much? And the answer falls into basically two categories, and that is rust that affects aesthetics and perception, and then there's rust that affects structural integrity and proper operation. And we're going to talk about those in order. Like all corrosion, rust is a condition of deterioration. The fact that something is rusting is an indication that that particular thing in question is not in its pristine original condition. Now, this may or may not affect its ultimate strength or its operation, but it can have a serious effect on people's perception of the strength and of quality of your particular course or whatever component that is. By way of comparison, consider our likely reaction if you and I were to call an Uber, and instead of a sleek black low mileage Honda arriving, one rolls up with rust holes around the wheel wells and more rust flaking off the lug nuts. Chances are we would be like, nah, I'm not sure about this. That same reaction is very possible when it comes to patron perception regarding rust on your course or your equipment. The amount of rust present may not affect the strength of the components or the safety of the course, but it may well affect how safe people feel and how quality they perceive your operation to be. Now, my answer to the question of how much rust is too much is when it comes to aesthetics and perception is when it begins affecting other things. Because rust has a way of spreading and affecting other components. Now, when I say spreading, I don't mean spreading like a disease or a fungus. I mean that it tends to bleed into, discolor, and stain other course equipment and components. Now, this includes things like hardware and wire rope, lumber, concrete, ropes and rope components, lanyards, the list goes on. And that's problematic because then that rust basically is expanding its influence and compounding the impression that the deterioration includes other aspects of the course, which continues to degrade the overall perception of quality. And it can also have a very immediate and negative effect that are very personal to people. By way of example, if you ever had a rusty piece of hardware on a harness or lanyard or course component stain a patron's favorite shirt, you know the one I'm talking about, the one that fits just right and that her boyfriend loves, and it gets stained while they're on vacation because of you, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Good luck getting a good Google review on that experience. So if there's just a little rust developing on a random fitting or wire rope clip or fist grip or something somewhere on the course that's not in contact with participants, no big deal. Let's keep our eye on it, or maybe we treat it like we talk about later in this video. But when rust begins to run, when it begins to streak or stain other components, or particularly when it's in a location where it can transfer to hands or clothing, it's past time to address it. But what about beyond aesthetics? What about rust that affects structural integrity and proper operation of the components of the course? When should those rusty components be treated or replaced? And what if rust isn't in an area that the average patron sees, but rather is on components that are typically only encountered by staff? How much is too much? Now, there are a couple answers to that, and the answers are pretty straightforward. First, we need to comply with what the course builder or manufacturer indicates. Now, if a professional aerial adventure company designed and built your course, they should be able to give you clear directions regarding the amount of rust that's allowable on a structure or structural components. Now, it may be in the maintenance and inspection portion of their manual, but if not, you can reach out to them, contact them directly, and they should be able to give you the information that you need. And usually that is based on a cited industry standard like ANSI ACCT 3-2019, ASTM F2959, or some other applicable aerial adventure course standard. Now, depending upon where in the world you operate, standards may vary. But your course manufacturer should be the first source of information for this question. The second resource is to follow the guidance of your inspectors. If your course manufacturer or some other professional performs inspections for your course and your course equipment, chances are that they will note increasing rust issues before maybe you even do. Often, if a professional aerial adventure company inspects the course, they also maintain them as well and may just take care of replacing rusting components as they encounter them in the course of their service and their inspections. But if not, and you do your own course maintenance, be sure to heed the counsel of your professional inspectors. It's also wise to train your in-house daily inspection staff to pay close attention to rust issues and to address them as they arise, rather than letting them get out of hand. Now, in doing your in-house inspections, your daily inspections, course checks, and those sorts of things that happen between your professional inspections, a couple rules of thumb will help in determining if a rusting component should be dealt with or replaced. First, is the rust impeding proper operation in any way? For example, if it's on something that moves like a pulley on a braking system on a zip line, for example, is it hampering or reducing its operations? Is it limiting its movement? Is it in any way negatively affecting how that component is supposed to operate? Or secondly, is it creating noise? On the same example, is there a pulley on the brake that's squealing each time a patron arrives at the zip landing? If so, check it, see what's going on, and replace it. Or is the rust on the component that you're looking at starting to pit the metal or to flake off or things like that? If so, it's probably past time to replace it. Well-executed daily inspections undertaken by properly trained staff are critically important to make sure rust issues are being addressed between these professional inspections. And this is particularly true in situations where there are factors that increase the pace of this corrosion. As one might imagine, environmental factors can have a significant effect on the amount and the pace of rust development, and not being diligent to monitor it can result in some pretty scary scenarios over time if they're not watched. A course that's located on the coast is one location that sees increased corrosion. Here is a photo of half-inch galvanized wire rope that we were called to replace on a commercial zipline attraction on the Gulf Coast. This course was in daily operation and under an active amusement permit when we did this repair. And this wire rope was severely degraded due to the aggressive rust conditions and the high throughput of thousands of patrons zipping on this cable weekly. Now, the result is that when we took it down, it was so rigid and worn that when we bent it, the crown wires fractured and splintered, as you can see in this photo. And because this example was so extreme, we pull tested a sample of the worst section and found that the rust and wear had reduced the wire rope strength by, take a guess, 50%. Now, if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll get notification on the brake testing video that we have coming up that includes this sample. So if you're not subscribed, now's a good time to do it. But it's not just physically coastal regions that can have extreme rust conditions. It can also occur in places where acid rain is a reality or that are continually damp and humid like the interior of Florida or other parts of the deep south. Now, here at Moorlands Camp in Jamaica, we are nearly 40 minutes from the ocean, but due to the continual ocean breezes and the humid, rainy conditions that prevail for good portions of the year, the rust challenge here is quite extensive. In fact, it's probably the most outrageous that I've ever experienced. Check out these photos of the extensive rust that developed during the several years that the course was not in use during the pandemic. But even year to year, between our annual inspections, this location creates severe rust issues. Which brings us to our final question: what can be done to deter rust development and to keep it in check? Now when it comes to small components like carabiners, rapid links, bolts, other course components, there are a number of things that can be applied to them that helps prevent rust from forming and can also be used to curtail it or to remove rust once it starts. Two preventatives are simple paste wax like Minwax Paste Finishing Wax and Stable Rust Stopper. Now these can be applied to components to keep rust from forming and to hold it at bay once it starts. The positive aspect of the wax is that once it's applied and wiped off, it's dry and protects for months. Stable is an aerosol that is sprayed on the components and left to dry, which makes it not an ideal application for anything that's on webbing or around webbing or things like that. Now when rust has already taken hold, there are quite a few options for stopping and curtailing it as well, including products like Naval Jelly and Rust Converter. Now both of these products are a bit messy. They are also not convenient for all applications, but can be good solutions for things like rapid links or carabiners or other steel components or hardware that can either be removed and placed in a container with the product, or that you can paint the product on and come back and wash and wipe off later. Now when using any of these products, of course, please keep in mind that it's important to follow all of the manufacturer's safety and protective equipment rules. Also, you want to keep all of these any kind of product like this away from and off of any soft goods, any webbing, harnesses, and those kinds of things. But when it comes to the larger course components like the larger bolts and the wire rope, one of the most common solutions is to use material that is naturally more rust resistant like stainless steel. And that's what we're doing here at Moorlands Camp this week. Now stainless steel is a steel alloy that contains a minimum chromium content of 10.5%. This chromium reacts with the oxygen in the air and it forms a protective layer that makes stainless steel highly resistant to corrosion and rust. There are many different grades of stainless steel, like 150 different kinds. But two of the most common are 304 stainless and 316 stainless, with 316 being the most rust resistant. So if you're in a location with conditions that promote heavy rust development, a move to stainless steel components and wire rope might be an option. Two caveats about stainless steel, however. It's considerably more expensive than standard galvanized steel, and as a general rule, it's not quite as strong in the same sizing as regular galvanized steel. So if you do your own course repairs and maintenance, be sure to check with an engineer or an aerial adventure professional before swapping out galvanized components for stainless to make sure that the loading requirements are being met. All right, I think that covers it. If you found value in this information, I would appreciate it a great deal if you'd hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And especially let others in the aerial adventure industry know about the resource that is Challenge Course Pro Tips. And as always, if you have questions about rust issues on your course or equipment or any other Challenge Course or aerial adventure related topic, please leave them in the comments and we will get back to you as quickly as we can. And to connect with us for professional challenge course, aerial adventure park, and zipline services, please visit challengecoursepros.com and we'll help you in any way that we can. I hope you have a fantastic day. I'm Don, and I'll see you next time.